meeting is now live.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Councillor Lynn Stagg, Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation. The meeting is being broadcast to enable the press and public to view it. We are meeting virtually in response to the limitations placed on governance by the COVID-19 pandemic. The City Solicitor has advised that this meeting be run by reference to the model, standing orders set out in the local authorities Coronavirus Flexibility of Local Authority Meetings Regulations 2020, number 392. Please can members and officers turn their microphones off when not speaking. I will ask the opposition spokespersons to introduce themselves, followed by the officers attending today's meeting. So, Councillor Simon Bosher.
Good afternoon, Lynn. Councillor Simon Bosher, I'm the Conservative spokesman for Traffic and Transportation.
Thank you. Councillor Graham Heaney.
Good afternoon, Councillor Stagg. I'm Councillor Graham Heaney. I'm the Labour Group spokesman for Traffic and Transportation.
Thank you, Councillor Heaney. Officers, is Kevin here, or is it Nikki standing in for him? Okay. So, Nikki.
Hi, I'm Nikki Musson, Senior Transport Planner within the parking team, and I understand that Pam is introducing a report on this.
Thank you, Nikki. And Jane Didino.
Yes, Councillor Stagg, I'm here.
Thank you. Are there any other officers here?
Yes, Pam Turton, Assistant Director for Transport. And Alison, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. Alison Lorna, Operation Transport Planner.
Thank you. Right, we'll go on to the, if I can get.
Lynn, you're on mute.
My apologies. Are there any apologies? I've given mine.
I haven't received any apologies, Chair.
Thank you, Jane. Members, are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Bosher, no. Councillor Heaney? No?
No declaration of interest.
Right, we'll go straight into the main item then, residence parking programme of consultation,
Councillor Stagg, apologies, can I just ask a question? We have a number of other members present at the briefing. Could we have some...
But I think they're giving deputations, aren't they? So do I need to introduce them now? Or when they're doing the deputations?
It helps to know if they're doing here to observe.
You can ask them to introduce themselves if you'd like to.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Councillor Vernon Jackson.
Hello, just saying goodbye to people. Thank you. So we've had people in for lunch, for Friends of John's. Look, so I just want to do a quick deputation. Is that all right? Is that the right time to do it, or am I just introducing myself?
No, you're just introducing yourself. That's enough.
Okay.
For now. Thank you, Gerald.
So I'm Gerald Vernon Jackson, one of the councillors, and I represent Milton and Eastney.
Thank you. Councillor Ashmore.
Well, yes, I am. Councillor Dave Ashmore, one of the councillors for Fratton Ward and also Cabinet Member for Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Harris. Oh, I've got feedback. Councillor Peter Harris.
Hello there, Councillor Stagg. I'm back. Sorry, the technology failed me.
Right.
Camera froze.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Councillor Whittington.
Councillor Matthew Whittington, Eastern Cranes Water Ward Councillor, just here to do deputation.
Thank you. And I think Councillor Leo Madden is here.
Lynn, Leo has just phoned me. Teams has thrown him out. He's going to try to get back in, but if not, we will come up with a low-tech solution of him phoning my phone and me putting my phone beside the microphone so that we can hear him indirectly. I hope that works.
Robinson style.
Possibly.
Yeah. Okay, lovely. Thank you. Are there any other members here attending? No? Okay. Then we go on to the first item. Nikki, are you presenting this? You're on mute, Nikki.
I think I'm introducing it, Councillor
Oh,
Stagg,
right,
and then Nikki
sorry.
and Alison are there for the detailed points.
Yeah, in Kevin's absence.
So
Yes.
this report outlines the progress made to date on the residents' parking zone programme and recommends changes to the programme in view of developments since the last report. The principles established in the September 2019 report, developed in order to respond to the full council motion of July 2019 to have a strategic plan for RPZ's consultation, have formed the basis of this report, i.e. that we have a rolling programme of consultation to respond to issues of displacement, and future schemes are prioritised using a scoring matrix. This method of deciding how to carry out consultation was developed following a full council adopting the motion in July 2019. It is therefore recommended that progress since September 19, as set out in paragraph 3.7, is noted. The amended programme as set out in table 1 is agreed. And finally, that when residents no longer want an RPZ or need one, it is recommended that the next area to be consulted upon will be decided by the prioritisation matrix set out in table 2 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Jane, do we have deputations from the public?
No, there are none, Councillor Stagg.
Oh, no written ones either?
I haven't received any.
Oh, right, okay. So in that case, we go to deputations from members, yes? So, Councillor Heaney and Councillor Bowsher, do you want to go first, or do you want to come up after the deputations have been made?
I think it'd be better to hear the deputations because we'll only have to come back after.
So
I think the protocol is to hear the deputations first, Councillor Stagg.
Yes, I didn't know if you had deputations as well. Okay, thank you. Councillor Van Jackson, would you like to go first?
Thanks very much indeed. A fairly quick thing on this. I've got 5 things I want to quickly go through. The first is to record my thanks to the officers who've worked so hard on this, and Kevin and Nikki particularly, who've done a wonderful job, and to thank them for this. I think this shows real progress in the work that's going on, and I think it shows that the rolling programme works really well, and that there's now a systematic approach, and that we've moved away from the piecemeal approach that happened to parking in the past, and I think that appears to be working very, very well. It seems there are almost 3 lines. There's the systematic rolling programme, but there's also the work about going back to the more piecemeal approach of going back to other places that have asked, but also then looking at the review of places that have got it and seeing if that works. But it clearly does seem to work very well. I thought the results from the Kings area were extremely interesting. That 84% of people said that it had made their lives easier in the zone around the Kings, when there's a lot of disquiet at the beginning about whether it would work or not. So in terms of the report, I'm in terms of my ward, I've got three things that members of the public have asked me to bring up. There are 2 sections in here where we've got consultations coming up fairly soon. One is MH, which is going from Highland Road up to Devonshire Ave, and then MI from Devonshire Ave up to Goldsmith Avenue. Inevitably, people are disappointed that consultations couldn't happen when lockdown was on, but that's just how things are, and it was inevitable. But I think there's considerable worry from people in the northern section, the MI section, that they are last on the list, and that they will be surrounded by other parking zones, and that will make their lives difficult. And it's the area with the strongest level of support for bringing in a parking zone, by far the largest number of returns for saying people supported it, and also 80% of people wanting action to sort out parking there. So I've talked to Nikki, and there are different ways of doing it. It might be that we do the formal consultation in September in MH and October in MI. It might be able to wiggle things so that they could be implemented together if that's what residents want. But I just think a bit of thought about the detail of how those two sit together would be sensible. The second two things are very small details that can be sorted later, but I just want to make sure that they're recorded. The first is we're trying to make sure that in Devonshire Ave, people who live on Devonshire Avenue are able to park on both sides of the road, whichever, and coming up with a scheme that does mean that that's possible. And then I had an email in from somebody on the very, very few houses. I think there are about 8 or 9 houses on the northern side of Highland Road, right down the end by near the roundabout at Henderson Road, for whom their parking is normally just south of Highland Road. And again, just need to think about how we sort those. It's very, very few, but I think I'm sure there's a piece of detail that we can do. But thank you, Lynn, to you and to Kevin and Nikki for all the work they've done. It really seems to be that this rolling programme seems to work successfully and well, and in a much more systematic way, as opposed to the sort of piecemeal approach that's happened in the past. So thank you very much indeed for that. It's really appreciated.
Thank you, Gerald. Who is next? I think Councillor Madden. Is he around?
I don't think Leo's there. Shall I phone him and get him to speak, if that's okay? Hold on a second.
Hello, this is Leo Madden.
Now his phone's off.
What shall I?
I'll go on to somebody else.
I'll go on to Dave then, because I think Dave Ashmore, you had a deputation, didn't you? You're on mute.
Fell into the usual trap. Okay, I'm not on mute now. No. Fantastic.
No, you're okay.
Okay, I'll get straight into it then. Yeah, as Gerald has mentioned there, this rolling programme we've got, you know, with my environmental cabinet member hat on, we've got to, you know, it's helpful for people to be rethinking car ownership, but, you know, the number of cars that are here, us being, you know, the most densely populated city outside London kind of thing. And in this time of climate emergency, it helps with that kind of focus on, you know, do people need to bring 2, 3 or more cars, private owned cars, into areas? It helps people rethink that as well. So I think that's got a really good role to play in our environmental ambitions. But also we've got to consider democracy as well. And I think that it's only right that people don't have things imposed upon them. I think it's only right that people in you know, local areas are consulted and are given their point of view. You know, this isn't something that we're imposing on people. This isn't something that people have to put up with. In fact, there was one area that was surveyed and they said, no, that's fine. That's up to them. So it's perfectly democratic there. And also, as has been pointed out, it works. We've got a parking zone, the GA parking zone in Fratton. And it's very different when you know, when I'm doing my, we used to do door to door. We're not allowed to do that anymore, door knocking. But when you speak to residents, otherwise, down in the GA part of Fratton, parking never comes up on the doorstep. You go much further afield, it's the number 1 issue all over the doorstep. So there is a need for it. And as Gerald said, the rolling strategy is a good one. I don't think any local authority has been able to do a kind of all-in-one, especially as they're not, you know, Portsmouth's very unique anyway, as I said before about us being densely populated, but no other local authority has been able to do it. It's not doable on large areas. You know, there's resources and times and money, infrastructure. I remember someone said to me earlier about Chichester did them all in one go, but I don't think they did. I think they already had they've already got most of the area in parking zones. This is just consult on whether to complete the other sections of it. So even that's not all in one go. And plus, I think it's unfair if it is a kind of everyone has a say in it. It might end up with people in areas where they've got, their own driveways, or they've got lots of garages. They don't need to park on the road. They would have a say on people, such as in my area in Fratton, which has got a lot of flat-fronted properties, terraced houses, which were, streets built for Victorian times, and they didn't imagine that we'd have big cars, 2, 3 per household. I think that would be a nonsense. So I'm happy to see the rolling strategic programme go ahead with this. And on that note, I'm going to say, because I think they work, and I'm glad to see that some roads above the GA parking zone are now going to be, they're on that the work stream there, and that's really good to see. And I'd like to see if more info on elaborated on the timings of that, specifically since the COVID thing put the mockers on a lot of things. But also, speaking to people in areas like in my area, like Toronto Road and Winchester Road, Queens Road, parking's the number one issue up there. So I'd like to see, inquire about how we go about getting them on the list of people who can be surveyed and ask their opinions on people. So that's my ideas for a suggestion, as with my ward councillor hat on. But yes, I'd also like to say I appreciate what the cabinet members done and the officers have done there, because it's not an easy task. You can't please everyone with everything, but I think asking people in their local areas what they want and doing it in a strategic way is the way forward. So that's what I'd just like to say today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Scott, Councillor Pinkman.
Councillor Stagg, I have Leo Madden on the phone now.
Do you mind waiting, Scott?
Not a problem then, no problem.
Okay, Leo, you're live.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, everybody participating, for your indulgence on this. My laptop was crashed, as it did yesterday, in the middle of a licensing committee, but that's life, isn't it? On this, can I just say that I've always taken an interest in resident parking, particularly when I was involved with the very initial one that we introduced into Portsmouth all those years back. But today I'm particularly interested, obviously, in the one in Nelson Ward, which is the FJ, the parking zone for residents in what's been described as Stamshaw North. And it's nice to see that it is the result of residents contacting people, because when we've been on the doorsteps, we told them to contact traffic to express their interest in having, or a consultation to having a zone, or a consultation on the zone. Unfortunately for us and for many of the city, the main interest of the residents parking zones was the neighbourhood forum, Stamshaw Neighbourhood Forum. Unfortunately, that's no longer in operation. I think, as I recall from the last papers, there's only 3 operating in the city anyway. And they were very good at putting forward views on behalf of residents. About 7 or 8 years ago, as you will see from the map and the information on the map, the residents in the whole of Stamshaw and Titna were actually surveyed about residents parking. And in the end, only a residents parking zone was implemented in what is now known as Stamshaw South. There was a little tweaking later, and then a scheme was agreed later for that part of Northern Parade, which is adjacent to Alexander Park, and that was, I think, in 2018, if I recall. I'm here to support the consultation with residents in what, as I say, is to be known as Stamshaw North. From my reading of the map, but my eyes are not the best of the world, and I couldn't enlarge it. It appears to include Titna, so we may have to change the name of that particular zone to be surveyed. And I think I heard a bit of what Dave Ashmore said earlier on. He's absolutely right. What we should be doing is surveying residents to find out if they want the zone or not, and then decide on their decision to make sure that it happens or it doesn't happen. The problem back in 8 or 9 years ago was that there were very few people actually, despite reminders to people, very few of them actually replied in the different roads in Stamshaw to the consultation exercise. And that's when we had this scheme with half Stamshaw done and half not done. things, of course, with Kensington, as they have in areas all over the city. There are different residents there, and there's a steady increase in car ownership, and I've taken that out of the report at 5.2, because it's absolutely right, and we've got to care for people and their cars, and of course, persuade people to use other modes of transport. So, Chair, thank you very much. I'm here, as I said, to give my support to the consultation exercise in proposed FJ. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Scott, Councillor Peter Harris.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Stagg. Much appreciated. I'm just looking at the map in Appendix A, which is FI, which is the parking zone the proposed parking zone into Doyle Court, which, as you can appreciate, is quite a small area of the city, and it's quite a contained issue. So, I mean, the only disappointment I really have about this is the fact that it's been on the programme since 2015, and seemingly the programme has been pushing it back further. And just basically, I've just had the question from residents when you knock their door, especially around election time. The question I get from residents there is, when are we going to get our zone, and what's going on with it? So it's a common problem within that area, and I accept that it's a minute issue compared to some of the other issues that we have in the city. But at the moment, those residents effectively could be waiting 7, 8 or 9 years for their parking zone, which is effectively what I think, from looking at the methodology that is being used, effectively is what's going to happen. I see you nodded your head, Councillor Stagg, so I think you're probably in agreement with me there. And you will also be aware if we had a planning application go through last week, which is going to put greater impact, especially on that area of the city, on the other end of Doyle Avenue. So the pressure is there, and I think that sort of area, I mean, has been waiting quite patiently for a long time. But also, I think the same could be said for the JH zone, the FJ zone, the JG zone, the KE zone, the GC zone, and the extension to AB and Wimmering. I mean, these are all being moved on for effectively what is a new programme, because that's what that's what the administration wants to do, which unfortunately seems very Southsea centric. You know, I know it's warmer down south than it is up north. I know it's a lot colder up in the north of the city, but I just think if we're going to do this fairly, we should be looking at the work stream of people that have asked previously, rather than going to a newer work stream and saying, oh no, you can have your zone, but people in the north city have to wait. I just don't think that's right. I think if we're going to be doing this properly and doing it in a democratic way, we should be asking those people, you know, again, saying, hey, you're happy about this, you know, and I don't think they will be. I think the residents here are going to kick up a stink, because, I mean, as I've said, 7 or 8 or 9 years potentially for an issue that's not going to go away. And I think I don't envy you as a cabinet member. I can see obviously wow, this one's heating up for you at the moment. I can definitely see that. And I think maybe the way to cool this down a little bit would be to just look at this again. I'd like you to take this report away and potentially burn this report. Oh, sorry, Councillor Stagg, I see that you're telling someone to be quiet. Sorry. I'd like if you could just burn this report. And sorry, yeah, I've got one. I know they're terrible at doing that. No, if you could just effectively burn the report and just look at it from a different angle, from the north of the city, you know, because I think this will take a lot of the heat out of the situation when it comes to the parking zones across the city. Because I mean, we represent a city of 14 wards. We don't just represent Southsea and Milton and that. We represent places like Hilsey. Yourself represent Baffin, so I know that have a clamour for certain issues over around that, such as this. We've got Councillor Bosher, who is representing Drayton and Farlington. So I think at the moment this is just very Southsea centric, and this is not a fair reflection on what is going on in the city. And we've got people waiting 7, 8 or 9 years potentially for a parking zone, which I just don't think is acceptable at the moment. And I understand that you're in a hard place as the cabinet member, and you've got a decision to make. But maybe I think to speak to the parking manager and say to him, this probably isn't going to fly. But it's fundamentally your decision, Councillor Stagg, and I just hope you can take this thing out of this one for us. Thank you.
Thank you. What you're saying is exactly what I said at last week's meeting, because now that the H zones are not on the cards at the moment, there is room. I think we have just about that capacity.
I'll be honest, Councillor Stagg, if you can just allow me this, it's a very minute zone. It is a very minute issue that I'm pointing out for this one set of residents. So I'm not obviously I'm fighting their corner. I mean, it's only 4 out of the 10 households recorded, which isn't a great number when you think of some of the issues. But I think there is a lot of casework behind this, which I think the officer can probably elaborate on a lot more than I can from historic purposes. But yeah, it's fundamentally in your gift. So I'll hand it back over to you. But thanks for your time. I really appreciate it.
You said it's assisted living, isn't it? You're on mute.
Not 100%. I mean, you've got people of vulnerable ages. It's a very much a mix there. The residents that I deal with, some of them do have some medical issues and such, but I won't go into that here out of their respectful nature, because it's their issue, not mine.
Okay, lovely, thank you. There's nobody else, I don't think, making deputations, are there? No? Okay, so it's over to Councillor Heaney. Do you want to start?
Hello, Lynn.
Sorry. My apologies. I couldn't see you. Weren't on my screen, and your name hasn't come up either. So my apologies, Matt. Go ahead.
No problem. No, well, I'm used to it. I'm a W. I used to be left off the end of registers at school sometimes. So you know, it's just one of those things you get used to.
So your picture wasn't there either, you see. So there's no picture and no name at the bottom, no initials. So apologies.
Oh, no problem at all. Thanks for the opportunity to speak on this. I'd just like to, and actually I'll address actually just offer my understanding of the situation in Doyle Court. It's very like some of the other places we have in the city. I actually, when I was working as a support worker, supported someone in Doyle Court, and I know how small an area that is, but it's right next to the main road and everything. So, and it's just like somewhere like MA, and actually I'll come to MA first in Eastern Craneswater. So obviously MA is on the list to have their zone reviewed in terms of to make sure that it's the right zone for them. And people have been talking to me for quite some time about that, and I've been feeding back to the officers about this. So I'm very pleased that it's towards the top of the list to be reviewed. I would ask that it's done as soon as possible. It would be minimal resource to do the 2 roads, Leopold and Beatrice, and just have that done nice and quickly to make sure that whatever they have there is right for them, with the different kind of parking zones. They have a 24-hour zone there for a very good reason, because 24 hours a day they do have parking issues, because people coming down in the evening to Albert Road, as well as in the day, etc. But at the same time, we've got to make sure that that we don't get dumping from zones that have the 2-hour restrictions where no one else can park apart from residents. So how that works will be up to how the residents in Leopold and Beatrice are asked in the MA parking zone what they say, but I would ask that out of the ones that are there for review, that is done at the top of the list if possible, due to how small it is. Moving on to the rolling programme, just echoing what Councillor Vernon Jackson and Councillor Ashmore have already said. This rolling programme is working. Only the other day I was speaking to someone on the phone who had a query about who lives in the area which is being formally surveyed now, so in the MG/MF extension area of Festing Road East and Festing Road of East of there. And they were saying about, if we say we want a zone, how quickly will it come in? They were surprised how quickly that would happen. But also speaking to the other areas, so the proposed MJ zone, which would, if on this programme, if this goes through today, that they would have their survey, their informal survey starting by the end of next month, and that they would be formally surveyed by Christmas. Again, they were surprised how fast that would move. And I think this is the difference of this programme, is that before we had parking zones that were put in, areas next to them were left for not just years, actually for nearly decades. So if we think of the MD zone as it is at the moment, that part of MD zone was surrounded on three sides by parking zones for 14 years. So they waited 14 years to be asked about having a parking zone put in, and finally this administration not just asked them, but got their parking zone in because they wanted it. And I think that's the really important thing about this programme, that people can see it's logical. They do have to put up with displacement because all parking zones displace. We know that right from the beginning, right back 21 years, that a parking zone just displaced to another area, and therefore the right thing to do is ask the areas next door. If you ask two bigger areas and you compartmentalise them into zones, but you ask them all at once, what you can do, which was something that would have happened if back in 2014, was that zones around it, without having knowing about other zones being in place, say no, they would then be completely surrounded by parking zones, and you're left with the situation of everyone else has a parking zone because they say yes, and the bit in the middle says no, so they don't. Which, of course, what do? Do you just leave that, or do you come back and do it? So effectively, it's double handling. This is the only way to do it properly. I'm really pleased as well that this now fills in the rest of the seafront. So you'll get into your dead ends in this programme. So we're going all the way down to the Lumsden Road, Fort Cumberland Road, Ferry Road area. And so everyone is having an opportunity. And also the most important thing about this, and this goes back again to Councillor Peter Harris's point, is that, and to actually make that point to him, that once these streams are finished, we can then move on to other areas of the city. And we've already heard from Councillor Madden about Stamshaw North. We've heard about Doyle Court. There's other areas in Caution that are on that list. There's prioritisation of other areas in places like Charles Dickens as well. So it all gives us that opportunity to say, this is when we're going to end with these streams, and then we can move on to others. But I do think it's absolutely right that we don't, like in the past, introduce parking zones and then don't ask the areas next to them for years and years and years, because that's what causes real issues for people. This is a really good scheme. I'm very pleased that we've got formal surveys going on at the moment, which, though they've been delayed, they are happening. That the parking zones that are coming in on the 29th in MD extension MF in the Craneswater and East Southsea areas are coming in with as little delay as possible with COVID. Thinking of COVID in terms of, and I know there's been quite a lot of resources issues that COAS have had to deal with, and supply issues. But this is a programme that works, and no one is going to be left next to parking zones for let alone years, a year, without being asked about do they want one of their own, and if they say yes, having it implemented. So I think that's a very refreshing change. It makes a complete difference to how, let's be honest, all parties in the past didn't do this properly, whether it's Labour, Conservative or Lib Dem-led councils. No one got a handle on this until we've done that now. So I really support this programme. I hope it will go through, and that we make sure that we have a good stream as well of reviewing the existing zones, making sure it's right, but actually making sure this time as well, unlike when last reviews were done, that it's not about there's a risk that we're going to take your parking zone away, because I think the whole point is what's come out in the past is once people have parking zones, they want to keep them. And I think it's really important not to sort of even offer that up. It's really important to say, are your times right? Is it still right? Because some of these parking zones have been in for a very, very long period of time, and people's needs change, car usage changes. So I really support this programme, these schemes, and I hope that it will go through as is in the paper. And with that, I have to go, so I'll leave you to the rest of the meeting, as I've got another meeting on now about the seafront. So thank you very much. Sea defences. So thank you
very much. Can I just put in here that things that people I think perhaps forget, and that is that residence parking zones were suspended for about four or 5 years. So there was nothing going on, and that was because it was costing us far too much money. And the second thing was we only had Nikki doing them, and Nikki was 50% of the time, because the other 50% was doing TROs and every double yellow line and white line and drop curb and everything else, because she knows every one of them in the city. So, you know, don't nod, shake your head, it's very true. So, I mean, there were constraints, lots of constraints, and we're in a better place now, but we still have not got masses of people to do it, because it's a long process that does it. Anyway, any more deputations? No? Right, come over to Councillor Heaney, because you're top left of my screen and you're in the middle of my screen, Simon, so I'll get back to you after Councillor Heaney. Okay? Councillor Heaney.
Well, I'm going to start with questions, because obviously I want to ask some questions about the report, and then I will obviously have the Simon if you want to ask questions, and then we might go to comments after that. I want to refer back to the 2019 report. I'm just going to, if you'll, I beg my indulgence, just read a short section, just because I want to clarify this. It says, in section 6.1 of last year's report, it says additional resources have been recruited to help deliver the programme. An additional senior transport planner has been recruited for the parking team to progress traffic regulation orders and parking zones, working 3 days a week. In addition, the level of resources available to support the team has also been increased, enabling 2 work streams to operate at the same time. Now, am I correct in saying that that is where we are now? Those same resources are available for the new programme if it's agreed today?
Not
Vicky?
Not quite. No, the senior transport planner we had working 3 days a week was Tracy, and she was only with us 6 months, and she started on the H work stream, which is a lot of work on that one. And then Alison, who's with us today, has taken over as an operational transport planner, and then took over HC, took it to TNT, and that one obviously wasn't approved, and that means that that work stream then has ceased, which is why we need to update this report and the programme. So Alison is now helping me with the very challenging timescales of the M work stream to try and do things a bit quicker.
Okay, Graham.
Okay, right. So that we have got slightly less resources than we had last year on the basis of what you said, probably one person down, just not working 3 days. Okay. I've had a number of emails from residents about these parking, which is rather unusual. It may have something to do with the fact that a leaflet was put out about this back in July, and people have picked it up from there. They've been contacting me and other councillors. With relation to the proposed M zones, a number of people have asked, and I've got 3 questions here that specifically have come up quite often. One is, where Devonshire Road is concerned, I've had a number of people saying
can you say that again? I didn't hear that.
They would like to see Devonshire Avenue, both sides of Devonshire in the same zone, because currently one side is in one zone and the other side is in the other zone, according to the map. And I'm just wondering if that is something that you'll take into account in the consultation, because I've said to people who've written to me, it's all very well me raising it at the meeting, but it's really important that when the consultation, you actually say this again, because that's important. But the other point that was linked to that was people were saying that they wanted Devonshire Avenue to be in one zone, in the MI zone. That's the other point that came across. So they'd rather that the whole of Devonshire Road was in one zone rather than in 2 zones. And the other question really was the issue about the implementation of the zone. There was also a concern that the MI zone is the smallest zone. It will be, as Councillor Brennan Jackson said, be surrounded by other potential other zones that are being implemented. And they feel that will put them under extra pressure, and they would like to see their zone being progressed at the same time. I suppose the other issue that comes out of that as well is that we've talked in the past about where there are boundaries with zones, whether we're going to have what we call fuzzy boundaries, allowing people on different sides to be able to park in either zone. So I'm wondering what thought has been given to that in relation to the boundaries for the M zone, and that clearly would apply to Devonshire unless you put it in one zone on its own, or you gave them the opportunity to park in either. So that's a rather complicated set of questions that I just thrown out.
I'm sure
they may
Nick
not be for
can
full
answer all
answer
of
now. They may not be for full answer now, but I wanted to make those clear.
Yeah.
Those are the things that are being raised.
I've had the same questions actually, Graham. So
Yes.
I've asked Nikki as well. So Nikki, can you give us the benefit of your vast experience and knowledge?
I think the main thing to say is that all this feedback is really important because we're still finalising the proposals for these 2 zones. Again, it's a programme of consultation. We don't know which zones are going to go in where, which was demonstrated by the H work stream. We've taken 9 areas off the programme under the H work stream, and we've added 3 under the M/N. So this is the right time. We've had lots of feedback about Devonshire Avenue, and there are options available. We can either include all of it, as you say, in MI, which would be a similar approach to other areas, or at the moment, the south side could be in MH as it was surveyed. The north side could be in MI as that was surveyed. But residents of Devonshire Avenue could park on either side of the road, which would be enabled by signage. So I think, as Councillor Heaney said, and everyone says, it's really important that people let us know what they think and what they prefer to see when it gets to the consultation.
Does that answer all your questions, Graham?
I think we need to be clear when we do the consultation what options are available to people.
Yeah,
because
right.
they'll need to know what they're going to be offered. If we're offering a range of options, like you can have a fuzzy zone, you could be another. They just need to be clear what they're going to be offered. I think that's the key.
So that's what we can do, Nikki, isn't it? Give them the 3 options. Either
it's something we need to decide before the consultation. So so I've had a lot of different ideas a minute, and everything that's being fed back to me is really useful and will help develop those proposals. I think if we're going to consult on both zones, you can change them slightly. As long as we don't put in double lines down the whole road when we propose residence parking, you can make slight changes.
So we could have 3 options there, either Devonshire Avenue being in MI or in MH, or a fuzzy boundary where residents on either side can park on the other side.
Yeah, I think we're all keen to avoid residents of Devonshire Avenue not being able to park on one side of their own road, because obviously residents of other zones can park on either side of the road. So whichever scenario we go with, it will mean that those residents will be able to park on both sides of their own road.
Okay, Graham?
The other question I didn't hear an answer to was whether the zone MI can be done at the same time as the other 2, because they're really concerned about the.
You've gone on mute again.
The MI will actually be done simultaneously with the others because they're really concerned about the knock-on effect.
Yeah, we're jumping ahead a little bit because I say we're consulting on MF extension MG at the moment, and then we're going to consult on MH next month, and then potentially MI in October. I think it's more to do that if they're approved, when we come to those decision meetings, potentially for approval, is that we can stagger implementation so that we reduce the displacement effects, or even give them a start date so at least they know when it'll happen.
So they both go in at the same time, if they vote in favour?
Yeah, well, I'm reluctant to speak on behalf of my colleagues in the parking team because I don't know if they could process all those permits for the same start date. But if there's a 4-week gap, that's a lot shorter than we've had in the past. Unfortunately, the residents of MH and MI have been suffering from displacement from ME for months because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that couldn't be anticipated, and it's not something we would look to repeat.
So we really want to, if they both are in favour, obviously, we need to get them both in as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, if you came to a point where you were deciding whether to implement MH, we could ask for it to wait until we've had a decision on MI and then try and put them in together all around the same time.
Okay, that's lovely, thank you. All right, Councillor Heaney?
Yeah, I mean, The reason I asked that question is because now I want to ask about the new zones which have appeared this year as a priority for the first time, which are NB, NC in particular, and also MK. Given the uncertainties that you just said about the implementation of zones and whether they are or whether they aren't, why are those 3 new zones now the top priority for the future programme?
Those are part of the rolling programme. So the report last year, we added MG, MH, MI, and then that programme has progressed. So now we've added the areas immediately adjacent, which is the idea of the rolling programme. And as we said, we've taken off 9 areas that were the H work stream because they're no longer required. And I think it's important to note that the rolling programme is about demand. So when we get to a stage where residents don't want or need residence parking, then that will stop, as we've seen with the H work stream, which would have taken several years to complete. So now we've actually got a shorter programme, and whether or not those zones think they want residence parking means that we can get on with other areas more quickly.
Yeah, I think it's very important that those areas that have been waiting for several years are surveyed and consulted on as soon as possible at the same time as the rolling programme, if we can manage it as far as officers are concerned. Because I mean, it is very frustrating if you've been waiting all that time and you've not, and now you see other areas going. And I understand why the rolling programme is that it rolls on, but at the same time, I think we mustn't forget those areas that have been waiting. I think that's very important. And I said this in our meeting last week.
Have we had requests for residence parking in the NC and MK areas?
There have been requests. I would expect, like, I don't know, but at the minute we've got residents in MI who are extremely concerned about what's happening near them.
Yes, I think we covered the M1. I'm satisfied with that.
But that's why they were included last year. It's the same reason why those on the other side of Eastney Road are included this year, for the same reasons.
Right, can we go to Councillor Bosher?
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. I've got a couple of questions if I can ask and just get some clarification on them in the first place. In 4.2, which highlights the informal consultation in the 3M areas, and you've got some percentages of yes, no, and unanswered. A couple of meetings ago, we put forward the suggestion, and you agreed that we should put in the total number of properties that were actually sent and what the return was. Because I doubt in any of those areas, or it'll be a famous first, that we had 100% response in each zone. And so when we're talking in terms of the MG Festing Grove area at 59% said yes, that's going to be 59% of a percentage return. And I'd be interested to know what the total responses were, figure-wise, and the total number of properties that were actually sent to surveys, because I suspect that 59% is actually probably somewhere, if history repeats itself, down somewhere in the region of somewhere around about 10 to 15%.
Yeah, I remember that conversation, and I think when we come to the report on the consultation on MG area, we will certainly include those figures, as you've requested. We'll include the number of properties. This is really just a summary for the umbrella programme, as it were.
Simon, when I was cabinet member before, I said it was the parking manager was Ken.
Okay.
And I said to Ken, this is wrong, having only such small returns. I think we should have a 51% return and then 51% of those returns in favour before we put it in. Absolute, complete and utter failure, because people forget, and they put the forms in the green bin or whatever, and so you'll never get.
It was a very short programme, that one.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Lynn, and fair enough. that it will be good when we're using percentages to have some sort of context against which they can be judged, because it looks, the way it reads in 4.2, 59% of all the properties in the MG Festing Grove area said yes, they want a zone. That's how the report reads. And I would question that for exactly the reasons that you've just said, Lynn. And with the best in the world, if we're using this as a driver, we need to paint the entire picture. So therefore, if we only had a 20% response rate, so therefore 59%, what's that, just over 10% actually wanted a zone, it should be put in a context at the end of the day, so that anybody that revisits these reports in a public environment, because they can do so, can actually see what sort of response there was for or against or undecided. And the 2% unanswered, was that somebody sent it back and didn't tick a box? Is that what we're actually saying?
Yeah.
So it didn't get in the green bin. Somebody just sent it back without ticking a box.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, they don't indicate either way.
Separately, Nikki, because I'm not asking for it all now, can you send me those actual figures, please,
Yes,
for those three
for the
zones?
property numbers, I will absolutely ensure that when we come to reports on the consultation for MG, that the property numbers are included. I think at the moment we don't have a threshold for how many surveys are returned. It's just if there's a majority in favour, we'll progress to the formal consultation.
I appreciate what you're saying, but people need to be able to make an informed judgment when they read the report. That to me may well reflect the responses, but arguably it is slightly misleading in the fact that it doesn't give the number of responses, and we've had little tables in the past with actual physical numbers in it. And I think that should be the norm for informal and formal consultations, so that people can make their own, and if they're statisticians, they can do their own number crunching and come up with the same answers. That, to me, at this moment in time, is misleading.
Yeah. So
anything else, Simon? It's transparency.
Yeah.
Well, that's not transparent at this moment.
No, that's what I'm saying. This is what we need, is transparency.
So I've made a note, when we formally consult on the MG and HMI areas, and we bring a report back to this committee, I will absolutely make sure that the property numbers are responsive.
But if you can send the informal ones to me in the meantime, and I would imagine Graham will probably like a copy as well,
yeah,
that will be useful.
The
other one I have, and it's a bit of a clarification thing, in 4.4, it talks about residents in the area around GB, Alverstone Road area. And it basically says that they were not in favour of an expansion of the residents' parking zone, 54 to 46. Well, again, the same argument applies with regards to the numbers.
Okay.
But when you go down to the work stream in table 1, GB Alverstone area extension seems to be included for a formal and an informal and a formal consultation. And yet back in 4.4, they were asked in 2019, and it goes on to say, therefore, no formal proposals were put forward and residents were advised accordingly. Are we talking about geographically the same thing? Because if we are, then why, if something that was rejected in 2019 suddenly appeared back in the workstream programme?
What did the answer in 4.5, Simon? Yeah. It's since ME has been put in, they're now having the displacement massive amounts.
They have additional parking restrictions during the matches at Fratton Park, and they didn't think they wanted permit parking then, but unfortunately, because the ME zone's now gone in, directly south of them, they've got GA to the north and GB. There's literally nowhere for residents to put their vehicles on match days.
So something that was turned down because the zone has come in is now going back into a prioritisation in the work stream. Why doesn't that same logic apply to some of those areas in table 2 then? Because, I mean, Councillor Madden was championing what he called Stamshaw North, which I admire his optimism, but if you look at the rolling programme, it's going to be 18 months, 2 years before we get to that one potentially, because that one effectively has been squeezed by zones around it, and yet it's in a different work stream. Why is one in one and one in the other then?
It's down to demand. So in Stamshaw North, their formal consultation was in 2012, and we've agreed to put it back on the programme because we've had a number of requests from residents, but over an 8-year period. For the GB zone, we've been inundated with emails because of ME going in as part of the rolling programme. So we've put GB back on the rolling programme.
I think a lot of people give up the ghost as well. They've waited so long, they don't ask any longer.
Yeah, that's probably because they're constantly getting the cold shoulder by the sound of it, Lynn.
Well, I don't think it's a cold shoulder. If there are not enough requests, then people because we've got a table now of how many people request and how near they are to various places, etc. So that's addressing that problem.
I think effectively, maybe it's probably my fault. If we had surveyed them after ME, it probably would have been, better. It's just now that they're surrounded and they've got the restrictions on football match days, that's when they're really suffering. So it was part of the rolling programme, and we've just put it back in.
But I agree with you, Simon, about some of those other ones, Stamshaw North. I mean, a resident got in contact with me and I went to Strode Road, and I mean, it was just so horrendous. I had to, in order to go and see her, I had to park on Double Yellow Line. There was nowhere else for me to go. And it's just horrendous. So I would be totally in favour of that being surveyed straight away, because she pointed to one house where between the people in the house, they had 3 vans and 4 cars in a little house coming straight onto the.
Given the fact that the council resolution was it July last year, and I think it's actually mentioned in the meeting, mentioned in the report. Just if I can just locate it, if you'll bear with me. It's asking for the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation to draw up and publish a strategic plan for the management of parking in residential and non-residential areas covering a period of at least 5 years. So on that basis, if we take the one that Councillor Madden mentioned, which was FJ, where is that in the plan then?
I think
because you have a programme at this moment that's effectively running for 18 months.
Yeah, we've actually shortened it this time because we've had the delays with the pandemic. It's really thrown us, and we've having to work extra hard to catch up. And this is going to be very challenging. And I think the problem we had with the programme last year is when people see that they could potentially be 5, 6 years down the line, it's not really helpful for people, and that might not actually happen. So this is a more realistic time frame, both for us and I think for residents, so that when we get to June next year, then we can bring something back that will probably look completely different.
I mean, I'm sort of looking at the programme, Lynn, and we've had. I mean, people are using the phrase rolling programme, but effectively all you're doing is chasing the displacement around Southsea at this moment in time. Well, because we had a programme last year which had zones which didn't include the Ferry Road ones, and all of a sudden they appeared in the programme because you're chasing the displacement across the city effectively. But those people, and we've had Councillor Ashmore mention it, heard Councillor Winnington mention it, we've heard Councillor Pater Harris mention it, we've had Councillor Madden mention it. They've all been talking about areas that have been sitting there waiting since 2015 to be dealt with, and effectively it's not going to happen. What's probably going to happen, and I'm being cynical here, is that I wouldn't surprise me if Stamshaw North and some of the areas that Councillor Winnington mentioned suddenly come to the top of the list and get prioritised. Those are a lot of areas, up in the cold north, if you like, that are sitting around waiting for, well, they've been waiting 5 years in some instances, you could also, you know, from being on a programme in 2015, and all you're doing is bumping them backwards and backwards and backwards. What you should be doing is what the council decided in July last year, and putting together a 5-year programme which includes when those areas on table 2 are going to go through that particular process, not just freezing them out, which is what's happening at the moment.
But what I've asked for, what I'd like to see is 3 work streams. One is the rolling programme, one is the ones that are outstanding, and the other one is the reviews. But we need to have the staff to do that, and I don't know if they're coping. We have.
I appreciate what you're saying, Councillor Stagg, and my sympathies lie with you, Nikki. I'm trying not to shoot the messenger in these particular arguments, but I can remember at that same council meeting getting completely shouted down by the leader of the council because they tripled the resource there. Now, clearly that is patently untrue from what Councillor Heaney elicited earlier on, and I can't see how you can divide 3 work streams into 2 members of staff.
No, we have
Something has got to give.
Got Tallulah as well, so it is.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Do have
it may take longer to do if it's divided into 3 work streams, but I think they are essential to have.
We do have more resources, and that's why at the moment we're actually dealing with probably 5 consultations. We've got Tallulah and a guy called Chai, and every day they are banging through the responses, answering the questions, and there are hundreds of them, which we wouldn't have been able to do before. And so we're doing that. And obviously we have Alison, now that the H work stream, which again was 9 areas that was on there, now that they're not on there, we can do the M's and M's much quicker. And this programme, although it's added 3 to the rolling programme, we've taken off 9, and it is a shorter programme.
If I may input into this, I mean, I think that Nikki's articulated the difficulties in putting a timetable to any of the residents' parking programmes. They do fluctuate, and I think we've always shied away from giving false expectations. We need that flexibility to be able to respond as and when the views come in from residents. So as with the example of the H zones, they weren't wanted by the residents. Oh, sorry. Lots of feedback. They weren't wanted by the residents. And so that work stream stopped, and we were flexible in working around that. Also, it's worth noting the fact that it isn't just Nikki, Alison, that are working on it. It has a significant impact on a lot of the areas within the Transport Department, and resources that we need to want to implement these schemes and to go through the consultation. As you'll appreciate at the moment, we are incredibly stretched, and I think there is a logic in ensuring that we are reviewing and renewing the programme on a more frequent basis, just to make sure that we give residents a much more clear indication.
So, if I can, Lynn, for those people in places like Mulberry Avenue and Doyle Court and Stamshaw area that turn around and say, when are we likely to be consulted on the zones that we've been waiting for 2015? What answer should I give to those people?
Well, as I said, I've asked for a 3rd work stream to come online to deal with those that are outstanding.
I suppose my answer is going to be, because it's a bit of a rhetorical question, is that if you've drawn up a plan that's going to last at least 5 years, well, then the answer to them is probably some point in the next 5 years, Mr. and Mrs. Resident, which probably isn't what you want to hear, because some of them are going to be waiting for at least 10 years, while other zones in, all right, I'll say it, Liberal Democrat areas are being bumped up the list.
Yeah.
That's how it comes across to a lot of residents.
Yeah. I can see how that would be interpreted. Yes, that is not, from my point of view, that is not the way it's being done. It is the program which is actually responding to the criticisms that your party made about the way the residence parking zones are being implemented. So we said about a rolling programme because we can't do it across the city. So that is why that is there in the first place. But I fully appreciate, and I've already said it, I'm not just saying it in this meeting, I've said in meetings that I have before our briefings on a Thursday, that I want to see those areas that are outstanding. We talked about it last week. In fact, Mulberry Lane came up in deep conversation about Mulberry Lane as one of them.
It did, and we didn't get an answer. I mean, you had the opportunity to rewrite the report and haven't effectively. You're sticking with what was on the Lib Dem leaflet that went out, which is disappointing.
I haven't seen.
I really think. Sorry.
I haven't seen the Lib Dem leaflet, so I can't say that I stuck with that because I don't know what I was sticking to. But
I'm gobsmacked that
it's on the second stream to be addressed, and it's in there on. Is it table 2? I can't remember which one.
Well, I have to say, Lynn, I'm gobsmacked that the Lib Dem cabinet member for traffic and transportation hasn't seen a Lib Dem traffic and transportation leaflet when everybody else in the south of the city,
I believe
north of the city
I
has.
don't know about it from what you said. I believe it was a ward leaflet. It's not my ward, so there's no reason why I should see it. That is a different matter entirely anyway. So you're just being political now as opposed to being...
Well, no, but then again, I guess that if a leaflet had been going out like that as a cabinet member, I'd have asked to have seen a copy of it, particularly as your leader has typed himself as the councillor for Milton and Eastleigh this afternoon.
Nikki, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that obviously last year we were looking at employing consultants to review the existing parking zones. And I know it's mentioned in the report that we didn't manage to recruit any consultants to do that. And apparently we don't have any funding for them this year either. That was what we were intending to do, and that might still happen in the future.
I didn't hear the last bit, sorry.
So, it's still a possibility. I don't work in finance, but hopefully, that can happen at some point, and we can have external people reviewing the existing parking zones.
Right. Are there any more comments to make about from Councillor Bosher or Heaney about what we've done so far today?
Well, I'd simply like to make a comment, if I may. I don't know if Simon wants to say anything else, but I said comment on the overall.
I can't understand you, I'm afraid.
Sorry?
I can't understand you, sort of going in and out.
Can you hear me now? I'll put on my lecturer voice then. I'm sitting in my room and I don't shout when I'm in my room. Looking at the way the programme's been put together, the report last year and this year says it's adopting a strategic approach and a rolling programme. But it's interesting to note that last year, the cabinet member decided to start a whole new stream in the H area, HC, which would have increased the amount of work that the party had to do. It didn't seem to me to be very much like a strategic approach. These areas hadn't got any issues with other parking zones or other pressure, merely to do with the fact that people had more cars than maybe the roads could cope. Fortunately, I think the cabinet member has been saved by the residents who rejected it.
No, the reason it was put in because residents.
Well, hang on, I haven't finished. I thought you couldn't hear.
Apologise.
I haven't finished. So that residents who rejected it actually saved you, because the ability for you to carry your rolling programme in the south would have been severely limited given where we are now. So effectively, we didn't have a rolling programme strategy last year. We had opening up a whole new zone and a whole new potential area for more parking spaces. What I'm concerned about now, that the two issues that the cabinet member I think has to deal with are, one, the schemes have been waiting for a considerable number of years for issues to be dealt with, came out of previous decisions around parking schemes. And we've given some examples in Nelson Ward, in Fratton Ward, etc. And these are not being dealt with. Yet we are now saying we're going to open up a whole new area of potential consultation in Milton. Now, it's not a coincidence that back in July, early August, the Liberal Democrats put a leaflet out saying there's going to be a whole load of new parking schemes, even before we considered the report, or there was a report actually in existence saying we're going to be parking schemes in those areas. So what I'm questioning is political judgment being made here about what is a priority. The idea of having the 8 zones and opening up a whole new area was a huge mistake, but luckily people rejected it. So you've now been said going to the end zone doesn't seem to me to be justified when we've got other areas which could be dealt with, some of them quite small. And I think that your judgment as cabinet member should be to be looking at some of those and dealing with them because they've been waiting 5 or 6 years. So I think the priority should be in the waiting list, not new zones N, C, N, B, and N.
Well, all I can say about is that in HC, they'd been on the list in 2012, or before 2012, when it was suspended. So that is why they came back in. It wasn't since 2015. It was since 2012, and that was because it inundated with requests.
Sorry, just interrupt there. So you're saying Ferry Road, Kingsley Road, and Loxway Road areas have requests going back to 2012?
No, I was talking about HC. Graham was saying why I'd introduce a new stream, and I said it's because they had been they were third on the list to be surveyed after Cosham, which Councillor Fleming put in. I can't remember which Cosham one it was, put in. I can't remember. They were third when the residence parking was suspended. So that's why. And then people kept asking us when it was going to happen. So that's why it came in. Nikki.
I think it's probably worth mentioning that HC Day was on the original programme in 2015, and that caused a lot of concern. So it wasn't the whole work stream that appeared, the request for the rolling programme that then developed HC around the surrounding areas. It didn't all appear at once. It was the concerns about HC that put that rolling programme up there, and by freeing up the resource of Alison work on the now the southern area, we will be able to do that much quicker than if we were both working on different parts of the city.
Okay, let's get back to the actual recommendations, which are, I'm going to get them, hang on. But note the progress, and there has been a lot of progress made. The amended programme table 1 agreed. I think that needs to have some amendments to it, possibly. MI and MH. I don't know whether they're in the right places.
Lynn, you can't actually do that. You can't actually change the body of the report.
I'm not asking to change the body of the report. I'm saying that we need to look at it.
Can I offer some reassurance, hopefully, that MH obviously isn't going to be September, and then consultation on MI October. So they are very close together. It's not that one is at the beginning of a quarter and the one is at the end of a quarter.
Okay, and that's just in response to what people have been asking, which, you know, is what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be democratic, listening to people and adjusting things accordingly. So if that is going to happen, that's fine by me. And note that if the work stream set out in table 1 reaches a point where RPZs are not wanted or needed by residents of the next area to be considered, is the area with the highest priority score shown in table 2, which is what we've already got.
So are you, sorry Lynn, just for clarification, are you amending the programme set out in table 1?
No, I am saying to Nikki that I think this is something we need to look at to adjust the dates maybe, if it's possible, or to get them closer together. And that is becoming from residents who are concerned in MI, that they're going to be sort of inundated. So if we can do something to address that, that's fine.
Well,
not changing the order of things at all, but just making the dates a bit closer so that people are not disproportionately affected.
Well, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just making a moot point. You probably say I'm being difficult. But Table 1 actually has dates against it for the formal and informal consultations.
Mm-hmm.
Recommendation B says the amended programme set out in Table 1 is agreed. So if you accept recommendation where it is, if you want to change it, you either have to remove recommendation B because you're not agreeing it, and come back again another day. You can't agree something and then change it. The amended programme, if you are agreeing it, is what you stick to.
Can I maybe clarify that MI is in October, November, December, and I think Councillor Slagg's just asking if it's more like October rather than the end of December. Is that what you mean?
Well, that's fine in that respect, but you set down the windows for the programme. Therefore, if you are agreeing it, you have to stick with those windows. So I know some of the deputation said, bring this one forward. Can we do that sooner rather than later? Effectively, if you want to agree with them and do that, you have to remove recommendation B. If you are going to disagree with your colleagues, then you have to accept recommendation B as is, and Nikki has to do the consultations in the time windows that you put them down. That's the black and white of the recommendations that have been written there.
I agree, Simon, but we've also got to listen to what residents are saying. So if we can actually minimise the disruption to MI in any way, it's not altering the table at all. MH is seen first and MI later, but if the gap between them is closer, then residents benefit. And I think that's important, that residents do benefit, and they see that we're listening to them. If we have to go back and do this again, then that delays the whole thing, which is not sensible at all.
That's not what I'm suggesting, Lynn. All I'm saying is if you want to follow the recommendations, which are reasonably black and white, you have to stick to the table that's dealt with in Table 1. You can rewrite recommendation B if that's what you choose to do on that basis. But you've also got to bear in mind, and I'm trying to be helpful here, there is the displacement and the angst comes around when a parking zone goes live. So it's not necessarily about informal or formal consultation.
Yeah, I
it's
agree.
about when the zone goes live. So if you stick to your consultation periods, you can accept recommendation B. You just tweak it at the end when it's implemented, so it all goes in at the same time.
Absolutely. It's fine. So I'm happy to accept all three recommendations. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I don't think there's anything else.
Thank you, Lynn, for your forbearance.